allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
President Hay.
Here.
Councilor Bean.
Present.
Councilor Boschman.
Present.
Councilor Beazall.
Present.
Councilor Clark.
Here.
Councilor Di Natale.
Here.
Councilor Green.
Present.
Councilor Joseph.
Here.
Councilor Caddy.
Here.
Councilor Kushmera.
Present.
Councilor Tran.
Here.
We will now have the public forum. Anybody wishing to speak on any item on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you're addressing a public hearing petition, you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the Senate table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the item number on the agenda you are addressing. Does anyone wish to speak? Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Natalia Martinez. My husband and me both a house in the 64 Nasha Street. I'm talking about 17515. I need a special city council permit to remodel the house and reconstruction and that kind of stuff. That's the reason we are here.
That is a public hearing, and you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak at the public forum? All have been heard. We will move forward to the Committee on Records. Councilor Green.
Yes, I'd like to report that the minutes from the last council meeting are in order.
Motion to accept the Committee on Records report. Second.
We have a motion and second to accept the Committee on Records report. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Communications from Her Honor the Mayor. Dear Honorable Councilors, I hereby submit to you a fourth fiscal year 2016 budget supplement appropriating $20,000 to IT personal services for a part-time IT technician. Sincerely, Lisa A. Wong, Mayor.
Finance Committee.
Dear Honorable Councilors, the following order will appear on your agenda for October 6, 2015. I respectfully request that it be adopted under suspension of the rules. This is from Anna Farrell, City Clerk.
We'll refer to the appropriate order.
And third one is the Pension Reserve Investment Management Board.
Will be placed on file in the City Clerk's office.
Will be placed on file in the City Clerk's office.
Mr. President,
Moving forward, yes,
is
Councilor
that-
Joseph.
Is that budget supplement coming to us in the form of a petition to send to finance, or?
It'll be in order when it gets to
It'll be in order when it gets to finance.
So is it a late filed order, or is it?
That's just a communication from the mayor at this point.
Okay.
Okay? If they don't get us anything else, it doesn't go anywhere else.
Okay,
until
so
we do.
an ordinance will follow.
Yep.
Okay.
Moving forward to the agenda. Reports of committees. Finance Committee. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance Committee met last Tuesday and took up the following: 163-15. Larry Cassassa, Community Development Director, to pass the order authorizing the submission of an application to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services under the Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Park Program in an amount not to exceed $250,000 for the purpose of making improvements to First and Railroad Street Park. That was granted unanimously, and 158-15 was the order that followed the petition. That was also adopted unanimously. And then 192-15, it was an order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the HUD lead hazard control grant in the approximate amount of $3,231,610 for the purposes of said grant. That was adopted 3-1.
President, I'd move that 163 through 163-15 and 158-15 be adopted as presented by the committee. Second.
We have a motion and a second that 163-15 and 158-15 be adopted as recommended by the Finance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. 192-15 is before you. Councilor Boschman.
May I be excused on this 192-15?
Could you recuse yourself? Yes, sir.
Motion to accept 192-15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept 19215. Speaking to the motion, I will comment first. At Finance Committee last week, all of you heard my concerns about the fact that they are looking to hire a city employee for the 3-year period to run this grant. I disagree with that. I think it can be contracted out, but that's a disagreement that I have with the head of the Community Development Office. But that does not mean that I don't think the program is worthy and should occur. The lead paint program offered by the federal government is something that this city needs to keep our children healthy and safe. And so I will vote for it, even after expressing my disagreement regarding whether it's a city position or not. But I do want to state that I was even more deeply concerned when I found out that the position that we're discussing was put out to bid a couple of weeks ago, before this body had an opportunity to approve or disapprove of it. I subsequently learned that there was a time constraint and they needed to do certain things in a certain manner or they might lose money. There were two components of that bothered me. One is that I think they should have had enough lead time so that they wouldn't get themselves in a box and have that occur. And secondly, they were here and had plenty of opportunity to tell us that there was a problem and an issue that they were dealing with, a time constraint, and had already advertised the position, and we never heard that. And I just think that that's very disrespectful to this body for the city departments to move forward in that manner. Councilor Di Natale.
I echo that, Mr. President. This isn't the first time this has happened. There was an instance last budget session where there was a position that was made available on the city website before we had a chance to appropriate the funds. And, you know, it's instances like this one where I get very frustrated because I don't know of any business entity in the United States or in the world that posts jobs before the funding is secured or the requisition is made. Just, it's not heard of. It's as if where I work, there are job postings made on a whim by HR, and the VP and general manager and this controller have no knowledge of it. So, I mean, whatever excuses we're going to get, the bottom line is I should not be happy as a city councilor that these things take place before we get them for a vote. Because if that's the case, then what is the point of us even having a vote? They've already advertised the job, and regardless if there are time constraints or not, it's not an excuse. I voted against the order because I am concerned as to the long-term the long-term nature of this position, the possibility for it to be long-term. It's a 3-year contract which may or may not be renewed by Housing and Urban Development after 3 years. The position is being advertised as a full-time position, which means there's benefits associated with it. And my concern with that is, and my main question at the meeting was, what happens after those 3 years have passed? Is the contract that this person will be hired under going to stipulate that once the grant has run out and it's not renewed, does this position then get laid off? Does this position then go away? And my concern is that was not answered. I should rephrase that. It was answered in the meeting that it is advertised as a 3-year position, but it's not up to community development as to whether that job stays online or not, even with the funding gone. Whoever the mayor is at the time can decide to keep that position, because there's been instances in the past where we've had people on contract who then stayed on full-time in another fashion. So it's sold to the council as a 3-year deal, fully paid for by the federal government, but then after that money runs out, we're told most likely the person's going to go away, but then 5 years after that, the person's still here doing something else. And I wanted that assurance that once the money's gone for this effort, that person is gone. And no one can tell me definitively that that may be the case. So I asked if we can stipulate in the contract with this employee, you're gone after 3 years, period. And the answer I got was we cannot do that. Maybe you could if you made it a contractual position, not a full-time position, which I also have a disagreement on. So I voted against this, not because I'm against the lead program, but because I'm afraid this job will stay with the city in perpetuity. And hopefully whoever the council is at that time, whoever the mayor is at that time, if they put this in there after that grant runs out, I hope we fight tooth and nail to remove it from the budget. Thank you.
Counselor Green.
Could we not execute that through our law department, that it be a contractual position that in 3 years that it goes away and there's no, then we as the city are not obligated to further have the expenditure from them being employee for the next 30 years?
Are you asking me that, Counselor, or you're asking the
I
city
guess
solicitor
through-
because he's the law department?
Right, I guess to you through Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Barrett.
I think, Counselor, that it's possible to do that, but I think really the simple answer is if there is not adequate funds. I'm presuming the funds for this is coming from the grant for this position, and if that grant then expires, I believe the city would have the ability to say we no longer have the funds and we are going to lay you off. So it's possible it could be handled by way of a employment contract. But the basic underlying theme there is the fact that if there isn't enough money to pay for the position, the person gets laid off.
And I guess my follow-up to that would be, and then they can collect unemployment for 18 or 19 months. Because
Probably, yeah.
I imagine that it would be a pretty niche market on who that employee is going to be to handle or to head up a program like this.
I expect that they probably would be able to collect unemployment.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Di Natale.
Mr. Saracen did confirm at the meeting that this person, the only cost to the city beyond the contract would be unemployment compensation if they were laid off. So that would be an added cost to the city that obviously the grant would not cover. Like I said earlier, I think it's not unreasonable to demand that if the money is coming from a specific source, from a specific entity, that the contract specifically states for this position that once that contract runs out, you are gone. No gray area. And I also posed the question at the meeting as to whether this position is going to be unionized. And no one could tell me that with certainty. Maybe it can, maybe it can't, because we do have, in my opinion, people in unions right now in the city that should not be in them. And I don't know how they even got on them, but that's another mystery for another time. But I'm concerned about that, because once they get in there, that makes it even more complicated. So maybe I'm being nitpicky here with this one position, but these grants that pay for jobs are wonderful, and then when they're gone, we bear the cost. So I just want to make sure that there are safeguards in place that we don't, and right now, no one can tell me definitively that there are. So I cannot support this. Thank you.
Counselor Green.
I know that we have Mr. Casassa here, and I'm wondering if we have the ability to find out what that job description is or was posted as, I guess it's already up posted, so I'd like to know what that contract says already on the position.
Mr. Casassa?
The only thing that has happened to date has been a posting that clearly states that the position is subject to appropriation. So there's no obligation that we've made on behalf of the city, and certainly that was done with the full knowledge that the council still had to vote on the appropriation itself. I just wanted to make that clear. However, because the grant that was provided by HUD requires that the city take immediate action to begin a process and to get the person trained to meet their deadlines, Liz approached me a couple of weeks ago and said, I need to advertise this position. Can I do that? And we had a discussion about this very issue, realizing that we need to be respectful of the process, that the council has to first review and appropriate the funding, and that is why we added the language subject to appropriation. The job itself, we did provide quite a bit of information. It's in your packet regarding a number of questions that you may have about it. It describes the nature of the position. There are actually several positions being hired. All of them are consultant positions, with the exception of the person who's going to be responsible on a day-to-day basis for being in an office with a phone and a computer and being answerable to both the Community Development Director and to Liz as the Housing and Development Director to coordinate their activities with those activities that the city is carrying out, because this program requires close coordination with several city departments and with other communities as well.
All right, thank you.
In response to that, although they did put subject to appropriation in the advertisement, I still believe that it was wrong to do, particularly without notifying us or communicating with us. And secondly, on a couple of fronts. One, it means that the Human Resource Director and the Head of Housing and probably the Community Development Director spent time getting this advertisement ready. So they may have wasted time if this council didn't pass the appropriation. And I hate to see city employees wasting time. But more importantly is that ad went out, and people who work for the city in particular, because it's first posted internally, see that and start making plans accordingly about, oh, maybe I should apply for this. And they talk to their spouses and they talk to their colleagues and they start that whole ball rolling, only to find out that later on there is no position for them to transfer to. And so I don't think that is a good practice for the city to be involved in either. Councilor Bean.
Through you to either Mr. Casassa or Attorney Barrett, this position, is it required that it be a city employee? I know that the positions underneath them, the inspectors or the people doing the work, could be consultants. But couldn't the director be under a personal service, a professional service agreement or some type of contract, and that way we don't have to pay those extra benefits or be encumbered by the unemployment costs later on? If it was just a professional service agreement for 3 years, similar to what we do in other positions, I don't know why it has to be a city employee position. That's my question.
My understanding, Councilor, is that because this person would have to occupy an office with a computer and a phone and work closely with existing staff to manage this $3 million program, that person, by IRS standards, has to be considered an employee and not a consultant. Certainly, if there is a way, and I would defer to John Barrett, for that person to be a consultant and yet still work regular hours in the office as other employees do without being classified an employee, we would be open to that. We limited it to one person who's responsible for the program, with being mindful of that concern. And we also set it up so that there was sufficient fringe benefit percentage in the budget to fully cover all of the anticipated costs after we met with the city auditor to determine what those costs would be.
Again, I appreciate that, but as the council has talked about before, about we're looking at the future and looking at the pension liability we have, and we've been talking about moving from having these rich benefit programs to try and limit it so we can protect ourselves. We have to start someplace. And I'm just saying, this might be the place to start. That's all I'm saying is we can't continue to do what we've been doing, because we're going to find out later on that these pension liabilities and other costs are just going to mount up and unemployment costs. So if we could start doing what we've been saying we want to do, we should do it at this position.
I would agree with you, Councilor. Particularly, Mr. Casassa's response indicated that as far as he knew, well, that means there may be other options available that he didn't know, that they didn't explore. And yes, he is correct. If the person has an office and a phone in City Hall or in the library where the Community Development Office is, yes, they're considered an employee. I just don't understand why that person can't work from home and call in and speak with the head of the housing department and do that and be a contract, just like you said. I just don't think it's explored or looked into deeply enough to really come up with an answer, because I think they got the answer that they want. Any other comments or questions regarding 19215? We have a motion and a second to adopt 19215. Councilor Caddy.
I have a question. Councilor Green brought up some good points. Councilor Bean. What is the answer to this? If we vote for this tonight, we're not going to have that answer. Is this time sensitive? Do we have to vote on this tonight?
I would refer that question to Mr. Casassa. I'm assuming it's time sensitive since they already advertised it because it was time sensitive. But maybe with the advertisement part in, it could wait. Mr. Casassa.
This is definitely a time-sensitive matter. I wish we had more time to discuss.
Could Could we, if we voted for this, could we get a definite answer to these questions right away from the solicitor and Mr. Casassa? I'm willing to vote for this, but I want that question answered.
Hi, Mr. President. I think that I'd have to talk with Mr. Casassa, find out if there are any particular federal requirements that would preclude what I think I hear Council Bean, Council Green, and yourself, Council Caddy, saying is that could this person be an independent contractor? And I note the comments that Larry made and the President made are all accurate, that if the person is working under the direction of someone in the city, using city supplies and using city material, it's very hard to try to configure that as an independent contractor. But
I don't.
if we could look at that, and I'd have to talk with Larry to find out how much time he has to make that
I
determination.
don't think we should pass up $3.2 million of a grant that supporting a program that's badly needed in the city. But some strong points were brought up, and if we're able to hire a person under professional services, that should be the way we go. So having said that, I would just hope that you give us that answer, so at least we know, next week, that it went one way or the other way. If the answer is no, that it can't be done, well, that's okay, we can live with that, but it should be explored.
Councilor Beazle.
I totally agree with Councilor Caddy that we need to find the answers, and not only find the answers, but have some kind of policies or procedures in place so that when these things come up, we just simply, when it comes before HR looks and says, these are the three options that you have. Which way do you want me to post it? And those are the types of things I think that we need to do moving forward. It's too bad we weren't having this conversation 3 months ago when we had more time. But I mean, this is a great opportunity for the city to actually de-lead quite a few houses and protect, especially the children in the city. So I will be voting for this, but it is disappointing to know that we're sitting here talking about something that we probably should have already had a procedure in place. Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
So it should be no secret that the council has felt this way since our discussions about our pension liability and other costs that we're worried about. So maybe at some point, maybe it might be necessary for the council to do a resolution on future positions, how we feel, just to let everybody know that if they're coming before this council, be prepared to this is what we're looking for. We're not looking to add any more expense to the already overburdened pension fund we have, or OPEB, and all those other expenses that we keep talking about. We have to lower, but every time we come in, we're adding things to them and not getting to where we want to get to. And we're not going to get there if we don't start putting our foot down and doing the right thing. So maybe at some point we need a resolution to let everybody know that that's the direction we're heading.
I think that's an excellent idea, Councilor, and if you would like to, I will work with you to write a resolution and bring it before the council. Councilor Kuchmarek.
I'll agree with Councilors Caddy and Beazle, who said, there's a tremendous opportunity that the city can't pass up. We certainly need lead abatement and hazard control in this city. That said, I am disappointed. It sounds like we haven't necessarily done our due diligence after repeated requests by the council to look at contracted options and consultant options wherever possible as to avoid the overburdened pension and benefits system we have in our city. That said, I'll vote for this, but I'm going to ask that we do our due diligence wherever possible over the next couple of weeks, where it allows, to see if we can explore a contractual or consultant opportunity for employment. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
I appreciate everybody's thought process on the pension and health care issue, and it's something we should keep in mind. But aside from that, this is about process in general. Whether there is a pension or health care question, to me, is irrelevant. That should be front in our mind no matter what job it is. My concern is the historical nature of these positions staying on board beyond their life expectancy. And then we're giving a reason 4 years later that says, yeah, well, we kind of didn't think of this, but they became in this kind of a union, or they're the mid-level manager, and we found a thing for them here, and we tucked it into the budget and you missed it. I don't care about the pension or health care question. That's a given. I'm talking about posting jobs before approval for the funding, posting jobs with the excuse that, oh, it's time sensitive. This is a simple communication gap that has been a recurring theme. So resolution or not, I don't really think that's going to make any difference. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to adopt 19215. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? One in opposition. Public Works Committee, Councilor Caddy.
Public Works met September 29th. We didn't have a meeting in August, so neither did the council, so this is a pretty lengthy report. I'll try to be as brief if I can. Petition 23214, Councilor Joseph and residents of Goodfellow Drive to accept Goodfellow Drive as a public way. That was held in committee. 24514, Councilor Joel Caddy and various city residents to make Main Street a one-lane street with a bike lane on the left and angled parking on the right from Blossom Street to Old City Hall, including parking at Monument Park for the library only. Also raise cross-trucks for pedestrian safety. This was amended in our Public Works meeting to delete the phrase angled parking on the right, and the amendment was held in committee. 11815, Councilor Jody Joseph and John, I can't pronounce the name, I'm sorry. O'Shane, to remove a tree at 30 Olin Ave that is doing damage to owner's property. That was granted. 12815, Councilors Amy Green and Marcus Di Natale to replace sidewalk on Hale Street, was given leave to withdraw. 18215, Councilors Jody Joseph and Marcus Di Natale and Miriam Roots to replace sidewalk on left and right-hand side of Boylston Street, starting at the corner of Boylston and Maverick Streets through 52 Boylston Street and Boylston Park, was amended to delete the original wording and replace with the following: to remove stump and repair sidewalk near 57 Boylston Street. That was granted. 18315, Councilor Jody Joseph and Joan Courtney to repair the road in front of 13 Greenhurst Ave and to replace the driveway apron at 13 Greenhurst Ave. That was granted. 18415, Councilor Jody Joseph, Michelle and David Cowger to investigate and solve drainage problem in front of 113 Harvard Street. That was granted. 18515, Councilor Jody Joseph and Michelle and David Kruger to repair sidewalk in front of 113 Harvard Street. That was granted. 18615, Councilor Mike Kushmarek to remove a tree stump and repair sidewalk at the intersection of Cedar Street and Pearl Street. That was granted. 18715, Councilor Mike Kushmarek to repair a curb at 59 Osgood Street. That was granted. 18815, Stephen Girton to repair sidewalk on Blossom Street and Day Street in the vicinity of 147 Blossom Street. That was held in committee. 18915, Kevin Maynard to request 3 trees cut at or near 116 Elizabeth Street as depicted on the attached map. That was given leave to withdraw and asked DPW to contact Unitil to remove trees. 19515, Councilors David Clark, Amy Green, and Sue McGain, 7 Forest Park to inspect and find remedy to water runoff problem at 4 Forest Park. That was held in committee.
Motion to accept Public Works Committee minus petition 23214.
Second.
Minus
23214.
to exclude 23214?
Yes, please.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Public Works Committee report excluding 23214. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. 23214, Councilor Jody Joseph and residents of Goodfellow Drive to accept Goodfellow Drive as a public way. The recommendation of the Public Works Committee was to hold it in committee. Councilor Joseph.
Councilors, I got a email communication from Attorney Watts. On October 2nd, 2015, I filed a petition for the acceptance of Turkey Hill Road and Goodfellow Drive. I will monitor the petition as it goes to the Public Works and City Planning Boards. I am familiar with the history of the subdivision work is being completed on its as-built, which is the last step. And he would ask that we take 23214 and give it leave to withdraw. So I'm asking if we could take 23214 out of committee and give it leave to withdraw.
That would be 2 separate votes?
Yes.
So the first vote would be to take 23214 out of the Public Works Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is before you.
Withdraw.
Motion second that 23214 be given leave to withdraw. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, Councilor Joseph. Recessed hearings. Bear with me, councilors. We have a few of these tonight, so I'm going to have to work at keeping them in order. 09415. The Fitchburg City Council, pursuant to unanimous affirmative vote on April 22nd, 2015, on petition 3815 filed by Councilor Stephen Hay, does now propose that Chapter 181 zoning of the Code of City of Fitchburg be amended to create a solar farm component. I declare the hearing resumed. Councilors, I received communication from Michael O'Hara, the liaison to the planning board today. Says that the board requests that the hearing be continued to November 5th, 2015. The board intends to address the solar farm issue at its October 20th, 2015 meeting.
I move that the hearing be postponed to November 5th.
We have a motion and second that 09415 be postponed until November 5th, 2015. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. 17915, Verizon New England, Inc. and Unitil, Fitchburg Gas and Electric, to relocate joint-owned pole, Snow Street, number T1E1, approximately 50 feet northerly from the center line of Main Street as outlined in the enclosed petition. I declare the hearing open. Is there someone here to speak to the petition? Good evening.
Hi. I'm Kelly Correa. I represent Verizon. And I guess the question we left with last time was where within the sidewalk is the pole located? And the pole is actually on the street side of the sidewalk, so on the front side of it. When moving the pole location closer to Main Street, we do need to keep it in the front side of the sidewalk because of the manhole on Main Street. We have a duct bank and cable coming from the manhole, and there's no way to swing that duct bank. There's no extra room to do that. We did have the Verizon engineer out with the DPW director, and he did agree that the proposed location for the pole is fine where it is and won't interfere with any kind of city maintenance.
Questions or comments from the councilors? Councilor Caddy.
The location of the pole, has it changed at all? Is it right back to where you?
It's what I
plotted
originally
it?
proposed.
Just a comment, if you go up in the west side of the city, most of the telephone poles are directly in the middle of the sidewalk. The city's sidewalk machine, which isn't that wide, can't get between the sidewalk and the guardrails. So if you go up River Street after a bad snowstorm, the city's sidewalk machine gets to the telephone pole, goes out into the road, comes back up on the sidewalk, and it's consecutive for about 20 of these telephone poles. If this one creates the same problem, will Verizon shovel that pole out so that people don't have to come off the curb into the road and then back up on the curb again?
The pole will be actually right at the front of the sidewalk, so it shouldn't create that problem at all because your machine will be able to go behind the pole, right along the sidewalk, like it does
I think
currently
I have
on
to
that
ask
road.
the director of the Public Works if that's going to be true.
You'll have an opportunity. Just not right now.
But again, I want to just bring everyone's attention to Councilor Boschman caught this, and I'm glad he did, but it's not just River Street, it's all over the city. And these poles are just directly in the middle of these sidewalks, and imagine the people that live in that area of Snow Street, Day Street. There are a lot of people in wheelchairs. It's impossible to think that they're going to be able to, if that sidewalk isn't cleared between that pole, that they're going to be able to go over a curb into the road, then back up again. And it's a very serious problem in the Main Street area, not only River Street, but Main Street. And at some point, this has to be addressed when we're approving utility poles.
I would agree, Counselor. I think that when those poles were put in, it was actually a time when people used to shovel the sidewalks. That doesn't occur anymore. We have the little plows that do them, and what the plow can't get gets left there, and that does create a danger, and it should be addressed. Councilor Boschman.
I went down there again on Snow Street. Now, Seabase has got his coming out onto Snow Street there, I saw the post in front of the sidewalk. It's like a little grave cut out. Are you just moving it a little bit further down from that spot?
Yeah, where the pole's located now, it should move,
Or is it gonna go back onto the sidewalk? Because right now, it's not on the sidewalk. It's literally, you cut it out. It's like this.
Right.
And then the sidewalk comes.
so it'll still be within that dirt area. That's why the sidewalk was poured like way back and not up to the pole. So it's still within that cutout area. It'll just be in line with where it is now, closer to Main Street.
Okay, no. When I brought up the thing about, to go back to change the thing, we're still talking about telephone poles. And I brought it up when I first got on the council, that you're moving poles, you're putting new holes and you're putting a pole right next to the other. And the council informed me that you couldn't do it because all the poles have to be in a straight line. What I have a hard time with is that St. Joseph and York Avenue, on St. Joseph, you moved 15, you dug 15 holes for poles. And I don't know what the future is going to bring down the road 5 years from now if the people want sidewalks on St. Joe's. That means we have to go back and we're going to have to move all those poles. How come we're not moving them back if you're replacing 15 poles? Now, on St. Joseph Ave, you move 10 to 15 poles. That I know because I counted them and I live in that area. York Avenue, there's 6 poles on York Avenue. You dug holes for 5 of them. There's only one left, and that's right on the corner of York Avenue and Wrangell. We don't move them back. Why not? And why aren't we contacting the DPW to say, hey, can we work together hand in hand, and how can we benefit you and us at the same time? Because there's no communication from one hand to the other. I mean, really, I'm arguing with you about the telephone poles, and you replaced 12 of them, and we could have probably say, and you can't come and tell me they all have to be in a straight line, because I went down Summer Street, and right behind St. Bernard's High School, just before Harvard, you see the poles start going down, you move one, and they're all going down a straight line after that. So then they all don't have to be in exact order straight. So I'm just trying to make it easier for who's ever going to be a ward council or for the city. If we decide to put sidewalks up and the plow comes by, they can plow the streets right, or the sidewalks right. You guys should be communicating with the city, the DPW head, and saying, hey, we're going on St. Joseph Ave today, and we're replacing 15 telephone poles, whether it be you or Unitil. Can we sit down and talk where would you like to have the poles located? But there's no communication. It's just like Verizon comes in and they say, we're the boss, we're going to put the hole right here, and it's going to stay right here.
Obviously, I have no answer for that. I don't engineer the jobs. I don't set
Kelly?
construction schedule.
Did you indicate that you had spoken to the commissioner, or somebody from your company had
Yep.
spoken with the commissioner of the DPW regarding this specific pole, and they had said there was not an issue with it?
Correct. I believe Gary Bevilacqua is your
Right.
DPW director. That's who it was. So, yes. I mean, I can certainly convey your message back. I know when they are working on lines, they do work within their current grant location. If they cannot work within the current grant location, they do have to petition, at which time DPW does get a copy of the petition for any new locations, and they are reviewed before we come here. So, I mean, that's the best I can tell you.
I mean, I know, and I do want to say thank you for 216 York Avenue. You had the whole fill a couple of days after. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I
And
do
the
get
neighbors said the same thing. Thank you.
Councilor Bezal.
Thank you. I was wondering if, in the future, when we see these pictures, if you could actually put in how far away, like how wide the sidewalk is. In other words, when I'm looking at this, there's no sense in actually knowing how much sidewalk is going to be left once the pole's put in. Because not all sidewalks are the same. Some sidewalks are sidewalks, and then there's a little patch of dirt. Other sidewalks are just sidewalks. So when we're looking at this, I guess the assumption is, when I'm looking at it now, is it's going to be right in the middle of the sidewalk, and there's nothing here to tell me how much space is going to be left for anybody to get by or anything to get by. So, for example, if I'm looking at this and you say there's 48 inches from here to there, and I know that the machine is, 36 inches, it makes it easier for us here to make a decision than looking at this and trying to figure out exactly where you want to put this. So,
Okay, I, again, will recommend that to Verizon, that we show distances within the sidewalk area. Again, this particular one is right against the curb, right in the front of the sidewalk, but I can certainly let them know that you're requesting that going forward.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
My biggest concern here is just, with this location, we've spent as a city an incredible amount of time, effort, and money with the new CVS being relocated there, and then looking at access to and from our downtown. I would hate to have an area, where a snow machine can't get access, to that, and they end up just not doing that area. They'd be ashamed to spend so much time and effort on infrastructure and accessibility, only to have someone have to go out into the street and around a telephone pole, or worse, that an entire section of the sidewalk can't be plowed because of it. So I commend Councilor Boschman for he brings every time we have a telephone pole being moved in the city. He's particularly vigilant about these. So this is an issue where you spend so much time, and you'd hate to see an area ruined for 4 or 5 months of the season. Of the year, for the winter seasons, because we don't have access. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the councilors? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the petition? Yes, sir.
Hi,
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
my name is Brian Murphy. I work for DF Craig. We are the general contractor building the CVS. I want to shed some light that you've asked where the pole is going, width of the sidewalk. We met with Gary, I want to say July, June, to talk about this pole relocation. Trying to work through it. Gary agreed that just moving the pole further down in line would be acceptable. The sidewalk width there is a 6-foot sidewalk. With the pole being placed, there's still a 4-foot sidewalk that is plenty open. To the other side of the sidewalk is a grass area. In working with Gary on this project, we had an issue with the driveway on North Street, the ornamental lighting. There was a light that was supposed to be relocated where our driveway was. I had Gary come down to the site. I said, it says relocate. You want to go to the left, you want to go to the right? Gary looked at me and said, move your driveway. We went right back to the engineer, and we redesigned the driveway to make it work, to keep the beautiful lighting that you have there. Also, at the same time, we replaced the sidewalk, the entire length of the property on Snow Street. That wasn't called for on our plans. So on Snow Street, you have new curb line and new sidewalk all along that whole stretch. But back to this pole. The concrete has been poured in that area twice now, thanks to the neighborhood kids. There is a gap that's left out, and that was left out on purpose, and that was to ensure that there was a place for Verizon to be able to relocate the pole, relocate their guy after meeting with Ray Duvall from the engineering group of Verizon. And we worked it out so that until this pole got relocated, I would have safe pedestrian access to this property on local streets. So I'm in favor of getting this done. It does need to be moved for the driveway. The pole right now is sitting in the driveway. We've created a temporary traffic condition there to operate safely at this time. But my client would like to complete this plan. We've worked very hard. We hope you like it. But I am in favor of having this pole relocated to, and there is plenty of access to city machines to take care of the snow removal with the pole relocated.
Thank you very much. The information you gave us was detailed and appreciated, and certainly will help me in my thought process regarding this. Councilor Bean.
President, I'd just like to thank representative from Verizon coming in twice and providing us the information and taking back the information, and we haven't had that before, so I think the dialogue is good. And also the representative from the project to be able to be here and tell us the things that they've been able to do to work out in that. So I want to make sure we're business friendly. Appreciate that. That's a great project, and it sounds like you did the right thing by talking with the engineer, working it all out. A lot of stuff behind the scenes, we don't know that, but it's good to hear from my point of view that we are working with you, that there isn't any stumble blocks here, and that you've been communicating well with department heads, and it's good to hear that there is good feedback and good favor going on. So I appreciate that and appreciate your efforts.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? All have been heard. I declare the hearing closed. The matter is now before you.
Move 179-15 be adopted.
Second.
Motion is second that 179-15 be adopted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing, 194-15. 194-15, Verizon New England and Unitil Fitchburg Gas and Electric. Oh, no, okay. To request permission to locate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures as outlined in the enclosed petition along and across the following public way or ways: Electric Ave on the southerly side, place new pole approximately 45 feet easterly from the center line of Eastern Avenue. Is there anyone here to, I declare the hearing open. Someone here to speak to the petition? That's interesting. She obviously didn't know they had another one on the agenda.
Motion to continue the hearing until October 28th. When's that next?
1 second, Counselor.
20th?
20?
October 20th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recess 194-15 until October 20th, 2015. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Special City Council permit public hearings, 175-15. 175-15. Brainy Taveras to request a special permit to renovate the three-family building at 64 Nashua Street. I declare the...
Sorry, it's open.
Okay. I declare the hearing open. Is the petitioner here? That's okay.
Same thing with the next one.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
My name is Natalia Martinez, and he's my husband, Bernie Taveras.
Yep.
We bought the house on the 64 Nashua Street a few months ago on June, and we want to make some repairs to the house, but we still just stopped because we went to the city hall for the permits, and we are still waiting for that. So we have some calls from the neighbors telling us about some people around the house putting some trash and that kind of stuff. So we want to move the stuff because we want to move to the house. So I hope you can help me with that. Thank you.
My first question is, are you here for a special permit because the building has been unoccupied for over 2 years?
Yes.
Okay. Second question for me would be, are you looking to change the use of the house? Was it a three-family and you're going to keep it a three-family? As you're not going to expand it to a four-family or a five-family or anything like that?
No.
You're looking for the same use in terms
Yes.
of number of apartments?
Yes.
Okay. Council Green.
Hi there. I've been by this property on several occasions, and it's not good. I'm concerned about the idea of you wanting to add 3 more parking spaces into an incline that's quite steep, and the fact that you've got 4 pretty significant code violations on the property standards from the health department and 27 violations in the property itself. So I understand that you are going to want to live in this, one of the apartments in this property.
Yeah.
But how much money are you willing to put into this property to fix everything that needs to be fixed?
The first off, we don't have a budget yet about that because my husband works in construction, so he's supposed to do all the work in the house. We know about the violations because we received the letter about that. So we went to the city hall and notified to them, and we want to begin with the repairs, but they tell me we have to wait until they give me the permit. So that's the reason we didn't nothing yet.
What is your time frame on securing the amount of money needed to make the necessary repairs?
We want to begin as soon as possible. I hope with 1 month or something like that.
Are you going to be working through the winter?
I think so. Because we have to repair the roof, maybe change the roof, and that kind of stuff. We have a lot of work to do in the house. We know about it. And exactly, and the parking lot. But we are still looking for quote for the parking lot. It's the more difficult thing we have in the house, the biggest one.
Right, because without the additional parking, you don't have enough parking.
Yes, I know.
Right.
But we pretend to move to the house because we want to live in the house. We are 4 people.
Right, but my concern, being your ward counselor, is that if you don't get this additional parking, where are your tenants going to park?
We
Because
already-
they can't park on Nashua Street.
Yes, I know. We have the plot plan, and
Right.
we give it to the commissioner. If you want, I can give you a copy. That's supposed to be the plan to do the parking there.
Right, I mean, I see the outline on where the proposed parking
yeah.
is supposed to be, and my concern again with granting a special permit is that historically, you get in over your head, and then the property just sits in disrepair and disarray. So I'm just concerned that I want you to know how big of a project you're taking on
Yes.
with this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Boishman.
Yes, ma'am. Like Amy Green, I was up there today looking at the proposed site, and I noticed that you share your driveway with 54, I think it's 54 Nashua Street. So they have the right to go up the driveway. Now, you have a proposal here of 6 parking spaces, and I agree with her, but you don't give us any kind of dimensional how wide the spots are going, because we have, according to zoning, and I went to the building department, there are codes you have to meet for parking now. We're not just going to let people park one behind the other anymore. We're trying to improve the city. We're not trying to give people a hard time. What we have problems with in the winter is we have people with off-street parking, and the plows can't get by, and it's costing the homeowners hundreds of thousands of dollars to go back and keep the streets clean, and that's why we're really strict on the parking. And I agree, it's going to take a lot of work here, because that is a big banking. I was up there. I didn't go all the way up. I only went halfway up your drive when I was looking, because I didn't have permission. I didn't want to be, make sure of that. But I said, geez, it's a lot of work, because you're really going to have to push that banking back.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you got a tree there. But I have some questions. You said you owned the property since June. Am I right or wrong, you said? And it says here, even if you didn't have the permits, how come you guys didn't start to cut down the overgrowth and all of that to make one less headache for you? Because it looked like none of the overgrowth was cut as you go up.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we still working on. We have to do. We are looking for some people to help us with this job, because I know it's a lot of job and a lot of work to do. But just we needed the permits to begin and work over the head.
Now, Councilor Green is right. You got a lot of, not you,
Mm-hmm,
but the Board of Health has written up a lot of violations.
Yeah.
A lot of violations, and rotting wood, railings, doors, vents, windows, you know what I mean?
Yes, I know.
Your husband's a contractor?
Yeah.
No?
Oh, yes, he was studying to get the license.
It's a lot of work, ma'am, I did it, I know. I'm not trying to discourage you,
Yeah.
but, it takes a lot of work, and like everything else, no matter what you plan on doing, it takes money.
Yeah.
And every time I go to Home Depot, or if I go to Lowe's, they look at me, they don't say, "You're beautiful, Paul," they say, "This is what it costs," and that's what it is.
Yeah.
If you came back, I think I would vote for the issue if you went out and you actually had a plan. If you had a plan to tell me or tell the building department how big the parking spaces are going to be, and they came back to me, to this council, and said they gave me a plan with an adequate print that's telling me this is the size of the parking spaces, so you have it. Then I would probably say, go for it, and glad to have you. But all I have in front of me is a drawing that shows three spots over here and 3 spots over here. And I asked the Board of Health, not the Board of Health, the building department, and he says, I don't know. That's what he told me. And he says, we have a zoning, and they gotta go by zoning. So,
Excuse me. You can see on the floor plan. You can see the matter on the size of the parking lot.
your parking lot is, you got 8,424 square feet.
That is a square feet, but for parking lot, for parking space is supposed to be 15 feet for each car, for each space.
How much?
Like 5 feet.
5 feet?
Or 15.
See, I don't know what, to be honest with you, I don't know what the zoning is, requirements. The building department knows that, and I'm just going by what he has said to me tonight before I came to this meeting.
I try to make a little ramp from this area to here, but I know it's a lot of work. But
I'm not discouraging you, you're young. I mean, it's great to be young. That's all. My concerns are the parking, and I'm not going to stop him if he's willing to put the money in.
Councilor Beazall.
Thank you, Councilor Hay. I would like to ask Mr. Barrett, on when we have these hearings and we're approving these, and I was up at the house, and God bless you, that house is like, boy, that's a project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that, and I have the same concerns that the other councilors have. I mean, I know that you're measuring out 15 feet for the snow, but where do you put the snow? So those are the things that you have to think about. So I guess the question to Mr. Barrett would be, when we're approving these, are there stipulations involved in these when we're approving them? Because we're talking about parking right now, and we're talking about maybe what the planning board would like, or maybe what somebody would like. Do these typically have to go? Should they go to the planning board first and then come to us, so that we actually have a plan about what should be happening up in that area? Because we're looking at 27 violations, and we're just judging that those are 27 violations. None of us know in this room, were they corrected, were they not corrected, how much time did they have to correct them? So I'm just kind of trying to figure out, before we approve something like this, should we have more meat to this, I guess?
Certainly.
I think, Councilor, that the ordinance, as it's stated right now, it's kind of a safety valve. As a general rule, if a property is not used for more than 2 years, unused or abandoned, it loses any grandfathered rights. And I'm not sure exactly when the ordinance was adopted. It might have been back in 2000. It provided for this ability to take another look at these properties for, I believe, only residential purposes as to whether or not they could restore that, basically reactivate that grandfathered use. It's a special permit, so you can look at, some of the criteria for special permit, like is it overcrowding, or is it, is there sufficient utilities, things like that you normally would with a special permit. But this type of special permit is more directed to just, should you allow the people to go back to their grandfathered use? It doesn't really address, now try to make it comply with parking, because in most instances, I think many instances, you won't be able to comply with parking. Because it's a pre-existing use, it's got what it's got. You can't make the lot larger. It just appears to me that these folks have tried to find on the lot additional parking, because the code would now require, I believe, 6 parking spaces. So if you want more detail in that regard, I guess you could change the ordinance to say that it's got to go to the planning board. I'm not sure if under mandatory referral, if I could ask the city clerk, does it go to the planning board? It doesn't. Okay.
City council special
Right.
permit.
But if I could add one thing, John,
Yeah.
in response to Councilor Beazall and Councilor Green and Councilor Boachman having concerns about those 27 violations. The building commissioner is not going to give an occupancy permit until those things are addressed and addressed correctly. Now, whether somebody believes that 27 violations is an undertaking that is beyond there, meaning me as a city councilor's capacity, I don't think I'd be tackling that. But if somebody else is willing to tackle it and wants to renovate a property and put it back on the tax roll and create spaces for families to live, I think that's really where we stand. And for me, the issue here is, are they changing the structure? That's what the 2-year thing is for.
So I
Councilor
guess
Beazall.
to follow up on that, when you're saying grandfathered, well, if, let's say there's a building downtown Fitchburg, and I want to open a business there, and it's more than 2 years, I have to bring everything up to code after 2 years, whether or not, are we saying that everything, when we're grandfathering it, are we saying that we don't care what the current codes are? We are allowing them to move in there as is?
Not as is, because it needs to
Right.
get an occupancy permit. But what we're saying is, we're acting as if it was not abandoned for those 2 years. So if it was not abandoned for those 2 years, it is grandfathered to what the codes were and the requirements were of the building as it was before. Whereas the commercial property you just spoke of downtown can't go backwards that way. It would have to meet all the current standings. That make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Our purpose here, we have 2 individuals who want to invest in the city, turn a piece of property that is an eyesore into something that is aesthetically pleasing and usable. It is a risk that they're willing to take with their own money as to all the things that they have to address. I don't believe the discussion should center around whether they can afford it or not, or they should take the project on or not. That's not for us to decide. That's their choice. That's the risk they take, knowing full well what is in front of them. Given our building department, I'm almost confident that an occupancy permit will not be issued unless every single thing on this list is followed to the letter. Okay? If there's one piece of paint peeling, you know that it's not going to go through. And that's unfortunate. But we're not here to decide if the violations are going to be corrected or not. There's a process already in place for that. We're just here to say we give our approval to the use, to the continued use of it as a 3-family for these individuals to invest their money in, because right now the alternative is to let it sit there and continue to be an eyesore. And as to the violations, I mean, you folks don't live there right now, right? So, I mean, they don't even live there. So they want to live there. So that's a plus for me, is it's owner-occupied. It's not absenteeism. Number 2 is, how many of these violations on this list were done before they became the property owners? I mean, these violations, 95% of them probably, or even 100% of them, were already violations before they even bought the property. And as to taking care of it, I mean, I guess you can make a case that some of this could have been taken care of, but in their defense, without the proper permits and going through the bureaucracy that we put them through to get to where they are today, It doesn't surprise me. I mean, if they've been owning this property for 2 years, I could understand, but it's been less than 4 months, 3 months. I bet you it takes that long to get through this whole process. So if I'm them, I wouldn't put a dime of their own money into this place until I get all the permits in place to take care of these punch list items. I know the overgrowth is one issue, but I can't fault them for that. They're just probably trying to get everything in place first before they do anything there. And we shouldn't stop it because it's taken long enough as it is. And I will support this and wish them both good luck in their endeavor in making this happen because it's only got the potential for upside. If it doesn't work out, then it's where it is right now. If it does work out, it's a win-win for everybody. So I think we should pass it. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
I see a resurgence in the city, and I see it in my own neighborhood. Okay, I have a house across the street that was abandoned for 2 years. I have a house behind me that was abandoned for more than 2 years. Okay, both properties have been purchased and both properties are being renovated. The person that did the one across the street from me, it's a family owned. They're putting their father in there and their mother in there eventually, but they have done so much work. They've cut the roof off, put a new roof on. I mean, all the neglect that went into that house for so many years, which probably could have caused violations to the previous owner, but because they were in there for 50, 75 years as a family home, they were neglected. And these people have put in, as family sweat and equity, more money than we could even imagine with the amount of stuff that they've done. One of the main problems I had with that property was that it didn't have any parking. Okay, where we're doing special permits for people that don't want to, that want to park right in front of their house. What did they do? Bulldozer comes in. They have a little bit of a side lawn this big. They have a driveway now. I mean, it's the best thing that could have happened to that piece of property was, whatever amount of cost to put in a bulldozer and a driveway. So it's happening. And the last thing that they did was cut down the brush around the house, because they're getting ready to move in. But all of the more expensive stuff was done before they even made the front of the house pretty. The house behind me, okay, the first thing they did was cut down all the brush and make it look pretty, but I don't think they're going to put a penny into the house. So which way you want to go, the person that you can't see what they're doing inside the house has spent a hell of a lot more money than the guy that cleaned the brush off the property and is probably going to, paint it and then try and resell it. So, like I said, I see the resurgence in the city. People are investing in our properties. We're getting some of the properties that have been in foreclosure and abandoned for years. There's people that are out there that are willing to invest so that they can have a family home. And like I said, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you fulfill all of the needs for that piece of property and it becomes your home, and it's not just an income property that you'll walk away from after you put a paint and siding on it or something. So I hope that you do the best for that piece of property. Good luck.
Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Di Natale beat me to the punch. Some of the discussions we're having now are really digressing from the intent of the petition. If we didn't have this ordinance, we wouldn't be having this discussion. They wouldn't be in front of us. All they want to do is just bring back, be able to repair the property and move into the property. They've owned the property. They bought the property since June, and they're waiting. They're waiting because this ordinance forbid them to do any work. That's all they want. They want to be able to do the work. The simple question is, do you want the property to maintain vacant, or do you want some good people to at least put some effort into fixing the property? I choose the latter, and that's easy. I don't know why a simple petition is taking this long to come up with a vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Caddy.
There's properties like this all over the city. Can you imagine if we had an investor from outside the city in front of us right now that wants to renovate this property? When I see a young couple like this that want to live there, that means a lot to me, and I think everybody here would agree. And I strongly support this. I think that the violations, it's a long list, but if you sit down and really look at it, it's not that big of a deal. That can be done. I hope everyone supports this. This is a great petition.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
I have no doubt your heart is in the right place and you're looking to make an investment, and you certainly will have your work cut out for you when you start. construction on this property, and certainly I agree that the bank would not have given you a loan to purchase this property, if they did not believe that you had the necessary resources to complete the renovations and move in. As Councilor Di Natale and Tran alluded to, getting to the spirit of what the special petition is for, it's for things like, is there ample enough parking that the property doesn't become a detriment to the rest of the neighborhood? I have every reason to believe that you'll move forward with making enough parking, with bringing these issues, the building up to conformity. My only issue here is one that's a citywide issue of how many more 3, 4, 10-family properties do we want in the city, particularly in congested areas. And that's no reflection on any individual who's petitioning us, is do we want to continue to allow more properties throughout the city that are in excess of 2-family or single-family occupancy. I'm leaning towards voting in favor for this because you're looking to live in the property, and you're looking to invest in a property that you'll be living in, and hopefully that means you'll be scrutinizing the tenants and making sure that the right kind of tenants that'll be an asset to the neighborhood and your property. But I think that's certainly a consideration we should all be thinking about, is how many more multifamily units we want throughout the city. Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
I just want to say, in all fairness, Councilor Green and Councilor Boschman, we were not trying to discourage you, but we do have a right to say what we propose, to tell you how many parking spaces that we want, and how different things we have. We do have that right. That's why you're in front of this council, and this is why we can set the rules. Now, I bought an abandoned property, and I'm going to tell you something right now. You've got to bring it up to today's code. It isn't just the 27 violations on this piece of paper. You've got to bring it up to today's code. That's what we have to do. So I only asked the question. I'm not trying to discourage you, and I appreciate it. I said you're young, you can do it. But my question was, for 4 months, I would have started cutting the grass, waiting to get the special permits, or cutting the overgrowth, to say, I want to do something here, instead of just sitting here and waiting, because you're going to have a lot of work. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot of work.
I'm going to respond and say, Councilor, I disagree with you. I wouldn't do a darn thing until I had the permission to do it. This guy could spend money and time, get rid of all that growth you're talking about, and then this council doesn't pass his petition. He's wasted time and money. So I just agree there. I will have one question for the city solicitor in relationship to this. This is probably the 6th or 7th one of these that we've had come before us in the last year and a half, John. And what I thought while this was going on, when somebody buys one of these properties, is there anything in the law that requires the seller to make notice to the buyer that this property has not been lived in for more than 2 years, and that they will be required to go before the city council in order to occupy that site? Or do people get surprised? Do they buy them and then afterwards they find out?
An absolute affirmative duty to disclose anything. It all depends. They simply are offering the property for sale. The buyer would have to, in their due diligence, look to see, if there's any title issues, but whether or not, and whether or not the buyer would go so far as to check with the building department, which would be a prudent thing if you're talking about a building that looks abandoned.
Right. I understand all that, but not all buyers are savvy enough or experienced enough.
Right.
So I didn't know if there was some way that we could help that.
The seller can't make an affirmative deception, but I don't believe there's an affirmative requirement that he disclose that it hasn't been lived in for 2 years.
I'll act on that. Councilor Bean.
Through you, Mr. President, through the city solicitor, any special permits, do we have the authority or the right to limit the number of units? In other words, this was a 3-unit apartment prior to the 2 years ago. Now that has all been abandoned, could we say, no, we think it's only a 2-family because we only think there's parking for that? Or is it or they only have the three? Do we have a choice on that, I'm saying?
You would ask me that after I moved off the page for this particular ordinance. But I think, Counselor, that the intent here is to kind of like turn the clock back to the point in time where it's no longer, their grandfathering rights are no longer lost. You're restoring their grandfathered rights.
So the answer to my question would be what?
That but the thing is, you're granting a special permit to let
So
them
if
do
we
this.
said we wanted 2 units, not 3, then it's 2 units?
I think.
And where I'm getting at, let me just say where I'm getting at.
I understand. You want to reduce the congestion,
Right.
reduce it. My gut feeling is probably that you wouldn't be able to do that. You might be able to put conditions in such as you really need to have more parking, because that's part of your authority as a special permit granting body, is to impose conditions.
Here's my point. So let me get my point. I totally believe what Councilor Kirschmerich is saying, and I agree with that. Our city is very dense as it is now. I think we have a glut of apartments, apartments, some not up to code in that. So that's my big concern, is that by creating more of these special permits or getting that, we're just adding to that. But when I see someone wants to live in that house, it puts a different light on it. So I'm saying I would go along with easily a 2-family U and one other unit, because I think you get enough parking there and enough. But that's a pretty dense neighborhood. So my concern is that, again, creating that density, getting rid of that density, as Councilor Kirschmerich said. So, but if we had the authority to limit it to 2, I would do that in a heartbeat. But I don't know if we do.
I would have to say, Counselor, I disagree with that. If somebody wanted to increase from what it had been before, as we've had before,
Right,
in Chestnut Street and a couple others that I have been opposed to, when you want to turn a 3 into a 5, I have a concern with that. But I had a real difficulty in reducing a number that somebody came before us. When they bought a 3-family, and they based all their finances on it being a 3-family and having 2 rental incomes. And for this body to say you're only going to have 1 rental income, we might have just screwed their whole project. And that's just how I feel. Councilor Di Natale.
Yeah, if this were to increase in units, then I would have a concern about congestion, but it was a 3-family unit before this. And what I find encouraging is there are going to be plans submitted to increase the parking, because the previous use as a 3-family didn't have these extra spaces. So they're trying to remedy that situation. Again, like Councilor Tran said, I get that this is what the meetings are for, but I really think we're beating around the bush with this. You've got a family that wants to invest in Fitchburg in a property that is lowering the property values of the surrounding community. If we don't approve it, it'll stay there and rot, and we don't want that. And again, with our enforcement agencies in this city, does anybody honestly believe that this is going to go through with code violations in the end? It's not. We're here to just bring the grandfather status back. Let the building department, the Board of Health, planning, fire, police, let them deal with all the other stuff. That's not our job right now. The only time I would be concerned about this is if it was going up in number of units, because then you have a situation where the previous use cannot accommodate the new use now. It just can't. That's not the case here. So, and again, a big plus is it's going to be owner-occupied. And as to having less multifamily units, I'd rather have multifamily units in the city of Fitchburg that are owned and occupied by someone who lives here and maintains it. Problem is, we have too many multifamily units in this city that are abhorrent looking because someone lives in Acton or New Hampshire who doesn't give a whit about the city of Fitchburg, and they just let it rot. That's not the case here. So I'd rather multifamily units if they're invested in by people who live here and they actually maintain the property. I'm not going to base my vote on this instance because of absentee landlords on many other instances. Thank you.
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? All have heard. I declare the hearing closed. The matter is before you.
Motion 175-15 be granted or approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that 175-15 be granted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one just as easy.
Special City Council Permit Public Hearing 176-15. Antonio Panetti to request a special permit to renovate the three-family building at 5860 Elizabeth Street. I declare the hearing open. Is the petitioner here?
Yes.
Gentlemen, good evening.
Hello. Antonio Panetti, I'm here to requesting a special permit for 5860 Elizabeth Street.
Same thing as the last one?
Yes.
Antonio, that it
Yes,
was
it's
abandoned for more than 2 years?
Correct.
When it was abandoned, it was how many apartments?
3.
And you were wishing to make it into how many apartments?
3.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from the councilors? Councilor Boschman.
I was up there today. I'm on Elizabeth Street. I'm facing your building to the right. I see parking spaces. I estimate you can only get four, maybe 5 if you squeeze them in. Are you going to go around on Whitney Street and put parking on the side of that place right there on the back of the building?
On Whitney Street?
Yeah.
I don't, it's on the corner of Rainville and...
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
on the corner. I'm on Elizabeth Street. I got
Yeah.
your section here. And then I went up the street. I took a right. And behind your building, you got land there you could put parking. Because I estimate you only get 4 or 5 parking spaces on the right-hand side of your building, if I'm not mistaken. And again, I'll repeat it. Congested area. There's no parking in the wintertime when it snows out. We have a heck of a time plowing the city streets. You're going to have tenants. They're going to park on the street. They're not going to want to park one behind the other. And according to the building inspector, he tells me we no longer can do that when you get an abandoned building. You got to have parking spaces, bringing up the code to the zoning codes. So I estimated, I didn't get out the measure, but I was up there today and I looked at it, and I see only 4 parking spaces, maybe 5. And figure 2 cars per unit, there's 6 cars. So,
My name is Jimmy Pappas, and I represent Tony in the purchase of it with Papaco Real Estate. Right behind that existing parking that's there, that I think you can get at least 5 cars there. If we had to, we could make that deeper and park some cars on an angle, because that's where the parking is. And it also leads for adequate yard to the right side of it as well. As far as the building being congested, it has a large yard in it. It's got 5 spots at least now, and we can enlarge that if you need be. And it's been a 3-family forever. This isn't a building that was bought for $20,000. It was paid $140,000. As a matter of fact, it's not even purchased yet. If the council doesn't okay it, then Tony will probably walk away from it because he can't have the use of a 3-family. The issue with the parking, is just adding 1 more spot. I think that wouldn't be a problem, Tony, if we had to.
No.
my thing is, if the building department, if you give a plan to the building department, and they say yes, I'll pass it because it's a great neighborhood. I've seen the house; it's nice. I don't like some of the overgrowth, but I presume you're going to take care of the overgrowth, not the grass, but the
Yes.
bushes and the shrubbery. But it's the parking, and like I said before, this is what the special council, the special things are in front of us, and we want parking to eliminate some of the off-street parking. We want people in their own yards parking in the wintertime so the city can do the job right the first time. That's all we ask. I don't think that's much. And, you know, if you can get 6 cars in there and you get the permit to the building inspector and he says yes, I got no problem with it.
Councilor Green.
I assume, again, it's an assumption, this will not be owner-occupied, correct?
Correct.
And your management company is from Manchester, New Hampshire?
No.
Okay, where will that management company be located?
Right here.
In town?
Yes.
He's my brother-in-law. I'm married to his sister and with Papco Real Estate. And he has 2 other 3 families, a 2-family and a condo, and we rent all of his property for him.
Okay, all right, that's what I was concerned about, that it was going to be a management company from New Hampshire, and how, if anything went wrong, would we get in touch with them? But I see now Papco Real Estate, Pritchard Street, correct, in town?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. This is another situation where the use is being the same. How long has this property been abandoned?
More than 2 years.
Yeah, more than 2 years, 5 years.
5 years. So it's been abandoned for 5 years. It's a drain on the community. We have an investor coming in, a well-respected investor, I might add, who has a lot of properties in this city. I believe you live here too, do you not? Correct? And so The owner right now of the property, or was owner, was Chase Home Finance LLC, Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, they care about us. So, again, no brainer. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the councilors? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Joseph.
Again, just the same comment I made on the last one. I mean, it's so good to see that people are, I mean, I guess I don't have to tell you, people are reinvesting in the city, and people that are landlords or have different properties in the city are constantly telling me, I'm walking away. So I'm glad you're not walking away and you're continuing to invest in the city, because I see the city going in the right direction with a lot of the foreclosed properties. So again, I thank you for doing this. And let's keep that going forward.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Too, we just want to echo the same sentiments. Thank you for investing and continuing to invest in our city. And just one request, that you do ensure that there are 6 parking spots. Otherwise, I have no doubt that Councilor Boschman's going to be out there with a tape measure measuring it. But in all seriousness, we are just trying to make sure, through repeated snowstorms, making sure that we're keeping the streets clear of congestion with parked vehicles. So any efforts you can make to ensure that happens. But otherwise, thank you for continuing to invest.
Anyone here wishes to speak in favor of the petition? Why don't you wait until after I say it all?
Look this way.
I'd look that way 3 times, Councilor. Thank you. Councilor Boschman.
Well, Mr. Pappas, I'm not trying to discourage your cousin. I'm not trying to discourage anybody whatsoever about investing in Fitchburg. But the rules are that we want parking for all your tenants. That's what we want. And I repeat, this is what the special permission is when we come in front of this council. We can set the rules what we want. If we're not going to set any rules, then why take a bus tour and Council Beazall place and say, do what you want. There's a lot of apartments empty out down there, and we'll fix them up. We'll put 18 cars in the lot, and if they can't fit, we'll park them on the street. It's a good neighborhood. I've been up there. I looked up there quite a few times. And I like it. I probably would have went after it. No, all joking aside. But we need the parking. Your tenants should have parking. And again, I won't vote for this unless you go to you come up with a plan and you give it to the building department, and he says yes, then you got my vote. Other than that, we're just saying, you can come back and say, well, we gave them 4 parking spaces, and that's all, you got enough room, and we got 2 more cars, and then the neighbor next door says, they're parking on the street, and we can't plow the street right. And this is how neighborhood go down. They go down. I've seen it in my own ward, because we don't have adequate parking spaces, and you can't plow the streets right. So I'm asking that you come back. I'm not saying I'm not against you guys. I want you guys to get it. Just give me 1 or 2 more parking spaces, and I think they want it. I'm not trying to discourage it. I don't think that's really hard. 2 parking spaces. You get a big yard. And, you'll be doing the neighborhood a great asset. They'll love you. Everybody will be happy. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
With all due respect to the counselor on my left, I don't believe he is a land surveyor. There is no evidence to suggest that there aren't enough parking spaces for that facility. It is not being changed for the use that it was previously at. It is staying the same use. They're not asking for 4 units or 5 units, which would then trigger a question as to whether there is enough parking for the facility. The facility is going to be the same. The same. The same. Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
And to the counselor to my right, you're absolutely right. It is going to be the same. But this is why they're in front of us. And we have the right to put restrictions on it. And the restrictions are, all we're asking for is 2 more parking spaces. Let Duffy go up there.
All you're asking for.
Okay, I'm sorry. All I'm asking for, I'm sorry. All I'm asking for is 2 more. Then let Duffy go up there, because I pay him top dollar, and let him make this final decision, and let him go up there with a tape measure and measure the area and see if there is enough parking spaces for 6 cars. Because according to Duffy, at 3:25 this afternoon, he told me you no longer can park one car behind the other. when you're taking over. We set the rules, Counselor, to my right. We set them. And if we're going to improve Fitchburg, then we're going to have to make tough decisions and say, okay, we're going to set it. But if we're just going to talk, blow air in the wind here, and not do anything about it, then why waste our time and why have a special special thing here?
Counselor, in my opinion, taking properties that have been abandoned for 5 years and putting them back to use and getting families in them and taxpayers and improving the neighborhoods is a positive thing unto itself. Any other questions or comments from the councilors? Anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the petition?
I'm Elizabeth Kuba. I live around the corner of 22 Marion Street. And
Could you repeat your name and a little louder?
Kuba.
Kuba?
Yep. I live at 22 Marion Street, just around the corner there. And I've seen that property for lots of years. I've been here for over 10 years now, and that's been abandoned for quite a while. So I'm happy to see somebody local come in and restore it a little bit, because it's, you know, it brings everybody's property values up. It makes the neighborhood nicer, because it is a nice neighborhood. There's beautiful houses there. There's lots of families, lots of kids, and just that, you know, like an abandoned property is just not safe. So I'm happy to see that come in and
Thank you.
Rejuvenate that corner there.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of the petition? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Wayne Tilson. I live at 19 Rainville Ave, which is just opposite the property in question. My presence here tonight was of concern as to why there was a public hearing, but you answered many of those questions about its unoccupancy. I mean, it's a relief that it's going to be repurposed as the same free-family that it is. I was hoping that it wasn't going to be repurposed as something that could be objectionable to the neighborhood and bring additional noise and perhaps degrade other property values around. So I applaud your efforts. I hope you are successful. And I hope, you know, that if there's problems that we can contact your agency in the future once it is occupied.
Sure.
And if I could address Councilor Boschman, I mean, private citizens in my neighborhood have taken care of that property and that lawn to the best of abilities with no vested interest in that property whatsoever over the last several seasons, and it looks a lot better than it did 7 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
Hi, Paul Grimley. Not really in favor or against this question. The property is requiring a special permit because it lost certain advantages being grandfathered in. Is that correct, what I understand?
Correct.
And what
Because it was abandoned for more than 2 years.
Right. So what was grandfathered in that it lost? Why is there a special permit? The property boundaries on this one property not within up-to-date specs?
I'll let the city solicitor answer that.
Well, if I might, Mr. President, you know, grandfathering essentially means that you have a property that no longer conforms to current zoning. As long as it was built at a time when it did conform to zoning, or if it was built prior to any zoning, it's considered grandfathering, so it doesn't have to meet the new zoning requirements.
No, I understand that aspect. My question, I guess, is the special permit is to almost go back in time, like you said earlier, so it would get that grandfathering in. What was lost because it was vacant for over 2 years on this property? No violations, correct? There's no violations with the property.
Sure, I understand the
Usually
question.
setback.
What was lost was his grandfathering rights.
Right. He's asking if we know if there are any specific setbacks or anything in zoning that this would have
When I went
lost.
down to City Hall today and read, there was something that possibly said distance on boundaries. Is that something that
Setbacks.
other buildings are closer?
Yes, setbacks are as Councilor Joseph, if setbacks have changed, when this was built in, 1956, setbacks might have been, 10 feet. Well, if now setbacks
Frontage.
are, 25 feet,
Right.
this wouldn't meet the setbacks now. So what we're saying
that's
is
my question.
that,
Do we know, under my understanding, that's possibly what one of these is. Do we know what the setbacks and boundaries are? I own the property behind the building, 3941 Rainville Avenue. And my question is it going back to the old setback or the new? Is that what's not conforming to the grandfathered clause? I don't know if you understand my...
it's going back to the old.
It's going back to the old.
So,
Whatever they had before, they can keep. They can still use that setback. If they had only a 5-foot setback on your side, they're not going to have to move the building. they can go in there, restore the building, it's still going to have a 5-foot setback. So that grandfathered right of having that 5-foot setback is restored.
Do we know, does Mr. Pappas, or does he know what the setbacks are and where we meet or we do not meet? Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. The left side setback going down Rainville, it doesn't meet that. It only has 7 feet because it jets out where there's a porch area. But the setback from where I understand your house is behind this
Right.
one, it meets that setback, it meets the frontage, it meets the
It's the side
side
of the
yard.
sidewalk where this
It's-
porch comes off.
Exactly.
And your company will, because for 5-6 years now, my tenants have been doing a lot of snow blowing, and they'll try to go as far down the sidewalk as they can to get
Mhm.
all the way down to the corner of the mailbox. Is that something your company will now do for snow removal on
Yeah,
sidewalks?
the city makes us shovel the walkways in front of the property, so because this is a corner property, both streets will have to be shoveled now.
All in favor then? Thank you.
I would just like to make comment that there are 3 or 4 individuals here who sat here from 7:30 this evening until 8 minutes past 9, simply to voice their support of this petition and ask questions about it. And I commend you for being patient and tolerating the rest of this proceedings to get to the point where you had an opportunity to speak. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against the petition? All have been heard. I declare the hearing closed. 17615 is before you. We have a motion and second to grant 17615. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? One in opposition. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, councilors.
18615, loan order.
Second.
We have a motion and second that 16815, a loan order for $1 million, be sent to its third and final reading. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
President Hay?
Yes.
Councilor Bean?
Yay.
Councilor Boishman?
Yay.
Councilor Beazall?
Yay.
Councilor Clark?
Yes.
Councilor Di Natale?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Joseph?
Yes.
Councilor Caddy?
Yes.
Councilor Kuchmarek?
Yay.
Councilor Tran?
Yes.
Unanimous.
It is unanimous. Orders Finance, 19615.
Move 196-15 up to and including,
202?
I hit the scroll bar too far.
20215?
202-15 be sent to finance.
We have a motion and second that 19615 up to and including 20215 be sent to the Finance Department, Finance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Move for suspension on 203-15.
Second.
We have a motion and second for suspension of the rules on 20315 and order authorizing the city clerk to notify the voters of the municipal election on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2015. All those in favor of suspension?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
203-15 be adopted.
Second.
Motion and second that 20315 be adopted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
For suspension on 204-15.
Second.
Motion and second for suspension on 20415, order that pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 54, Section 34, use of voting machines by cities and towns, that the city of Fitchburg does now authorize the discontinuance of the use of the AccuVote voting machines and adopt the use of the ImageCast Precinct Tabulator, ICP, commencing at the March 1st, 2016 presidential primary. All those in favor of suspension?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
204-15 be granted.
Second.
Motion and second that 20415 be granted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Petitions.
Motion 205-15 up to and including 210-15 be sent to their respective committees.
Second.
Motion and second that 20515 up to and including 21015 be sent to their respective committees. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Second.
We have a motion